Ladies and gentlemen, obviously the hashtag is next12. I'm going to... I'm afraid I've just arrived because I had to write an article for TechCrunch, so I got a little bit late. I did.
Hangover.
I'll be watching... We're doing some reorganising here. Apparently we can't afford cushions, so it's to be a little bit hard on everybody's. What we want to do actually is, the first session we'll be talking about really is about how to become Germany's next top startup. You have seen the programme, I won't need to go on further about that. But I think there's a little bit of a wider context here, which is that Europe and the world generally is going crazy for tech, and every jurisdiction is trying to create a cluster. In London, for instance, we have something that we came up with as a very organic, community-led thing called Silicon Roundabout, which was actually started as a joke by Matt Bidoff, who was at a company called Doppler, which was acquired by Nokia, and Matt moved to Berlin. And Matt came up with a joke on Twitter a few years ago called, instead of Silicon Valley, he called it Silicon Roundabout, because there's a roundabout that people go around in cars in London near a street called Old Street. And it was literally a joke. And it was spread around on Twitter, and it was like a little in-joke thing. You know, people would call it Silicon Roundabout instead of Silicon Valley. But it attracted the attention of the British government, and they came up with a new idea to promote it internationally called Tech City. Now, at the same time, San Francisco has come up with a new project would you believe, to promote technology in San Francisco, because they've realized that if they don't get on the train as much as anybody else, they may lose out internationally. And at the same time, again, you guys here in Germany are very interested in clustering, creating a cluster, and it's happened organically over the last few years here in Berlin. So this is the wider context. In fact, in Paris, there is the old mint, where they used to make currency, part of the old mint has been turned over to a startup project there called Le Camping. So everybody's interested in this thing, everybody wants to kind of get on the Clue train, but the question is, how do you manufacture this? How do you create it? So, with that background, let me introduce our guests. Can I have Christian Weiss from Project A? And you're going to have to excuse my appalling English pronunciation. Stephan Breidenbach from Betterplace. Please welcome. Grab yourself some water, gentlemen. So, first of all, Christian, where are you? There you are. Project A, we wrote about you actually recently on TechCrunch. Many people who are here will be familiar with the Otto Group, massive, known best for its retail operation. But do you want to give some background briefly to Otto and what Project A is?
First of all, let me say that I was a bit afraid to read Mike Butcher walking out of an interview at Next Berlin on TechCrunch. So happy to be here. Happy to be here sitting.
I'm really not that bad. I'm a pussycat.
That's good already. A quick intro to Project.
Unless you walk out of an interview with me.
Yeah, I heard.
Then I fuck you over.
I heard about something like that. I'm so glad you're here.
You can tweet that.
Otto Group actually did an investment, a pretty significant investment into a fund that we set up with some friends of mine who I used to start Rocket Internet and work with at Rocket Internet with for the last years, to do company building, both in the classical internet, consumer internet, but also in business to business and mobile sphere. So we're sitting on some money that Otto provided us. We're brought together some experts that hopefully help us grow some successful companies together with strong entrepreneurs and very open to more tech-driven and innovative topics than we used to do.
Sorry.
That's it.
That's it, right. Okay. Now, turning to you, sir, Stephan, Betterplace. a few people will be familiar with you, what you're doing, but many aren't. So if you want to describe what you're doing, so for the benefit of the audience.
Well, just a few words about Betterplace. Betterplace is a platform, a marketplace for social projects worldwide. The idea to Betterplace came from two angles. One angle was there are many things that are done in local communities nearby in the neighborhood or somewhere in Asia, and nobody knows about it. And there might be a lot of people who want to participate with time, money, and expertise to help people further these projects. And the other angle was that we think the donation industry is rotten, and there's time for some disruption. And that's why we founded Betterplace. And now you find over 5,000 projects worldwide on Betterplace, yeah, it's blooming.
So what I'd like to know really is what your position is then on the creation of an ecosystem. I mean, do you have a kind of view on how you create an ecosystem, a startup ecosystem, for instance?
Well, at first, of course, there's a difference if you make a startup for profit or a non-profit. Betterplace is non-profit. That means that it's a non-profit for the initiators. But it doesn't mean that we don't work for the fact that we are financially sustainable. So from the beginning, we planned to write black numbers, and that's what we achieved. So Betterplace, it's financing itself. So in order to do that, you need an ecosystem, and you need to think of in which market you are, and how you can finance that what you want to do for a non-profit.
Sure. I mean, you're going to go a completely different end of the spectrum, because you guys are going to be incubating startups, effectively for profit, and this is for, well, hell, why not, right? So, but I mean, do you have a view on what he's doing?
Yeah, I do have a view on what he's doing. I think it's a great thing. As you said, the main difference is that we're into starting businesses for profit. However, I think that as long as you're working with similar mechanics and similar markets, you need similar resources to successfully do so. And the purpose of what you're doing is might be a bit different to what we are doing, but I think the ecosystem we're working on is pretty similar. So I totally support this, and I think it's a great idea. However, as you said, we are doing something a bit different, but in terms of the tech resources you need, in terms of the numbers you work with, in terms of online marketing, customer acquisition, or user acquisition, whatever you want to do, I think you should work into similar directions.
You can put it another way. To make something non-profit is not an excuse for being not professional.
Absolutely.
So you have to do the whole spectrum.
Yeah,
right. I think, I mean, we're coming at it, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because the Europeans generally are coming at things from different angles, say, from the Americans, where there's a long tradition of philanthropy, there's a long tradition of making money and then putting money back into the business, or the business generally, as in the sector. Why do you think Europeans are so scared of profit?
Well, we are not scared when it comes to profit, but I think it's a question of tradition. Many people are used to the scheme, to the thinking scheme, that these areas have to be separated. Once you do something for good, then it's non-profit, but then it has to be totally non-profit, and the others do something for profit, and there has to be nothing good in there. I think this is totally wrong, and it's outdated. And if you look at a trend, you will probably see that more and more corporations, companies, startups are looked at if they produce anything good for societal needs. So why not combine financial profits and social profits? So it's not dependent on non-profit or for-profit, it's dependent on how sustainable is the model that you live and what you work for, how sustainable is your vision, and how much are you really needed on the market.
I mean, do you think that Europeans are scared of profit, or do you think that we're changing?
Well, I've never been accused of being scared of being interested in profit myself, and I don't really think that we Europeans are. I'm not quite sure what the idea behind your question is, but I think what probably Europeans lack is the ambition of growing something really big. And that might be in terms of geography, that might be in terms of profit or whatsoever. And that is something that, talking about a vision, we might need to learn from the Americans, thinking big, thinking beyond our home markets, thinking beyond Berlin, thinking beyond Germany, maybe thinking beyond Europe. But I think we're learning. If you look at what most of the companies that have been started during the last 2 or 3 years are doing, they are scaling this business beyond Europe in a way that before no company has really tried. So I think, yes, we are learning, and I think it's good that we're going that way.
Do you think that your projects, are you going to be largely Germany focused or global?
Well, if you start something like Betterplace, you have a global vision, and you want the whole thing to go global. But if you have to start somewhere, and you don't get that much attention when you're started in Germany than when you're a startup in the US. So we had first to go in our market and then continue to expand, and that's exactly what we do right now.
I'm interested in you guys, what you think about the media in Germany. What's the media's reaction to startups generally? Let me give you an example. When technology companies launch in London, what happens is that the national media press initially says something like hot new startup launched by really generally only pays attention if they're sexy, if they're founded by good-looking people. Or people in leather jackets or something like that. They don't tend to celebrate entrepreneurship particularly. We have a newspaper in London called the Daily Mail, which we like to call the Daily Fear, which generally sort of likes to put people down and sort of, make people scared of things in order to sell newspapers. Do you think that the German media generally is accepting and a backing of entrepreneurs, or do you think it used to be like, it's always been like that, or it's changed over time, or tell me about it. What do you think? What was the reaction, for instance, when you guys started?
I think the reaction was pretty positive, and yes, I would say that the media picked up on what we are planning to do. I'm not so sure whether it's because of people wearing leather jackets or because of some startups being sexy, but I think it is because of an increasing important factor, at least here in Berlin. Our industry, all of us, have, if you look at the economic situation in Berlin, if you look in which part of the industry jobs have been created, it is very much us who create those jobs, and that gives us a relevance that then will also be covered by the media. So I would say that maybe there's no such Daily Mail thing here. I think it's more because of the relevance that our industry is gaining than because of people in leather jackets are sexy.
Let's leave the leather jackets out of it.
Yeah.
What I meant was it makes someone making a good story. But what about the failure culture of Germany? I go around Europe a lot, and people talk about. I'm not saying this is a German thing necessarily. I'm saying that we are caricatured, especially by US press. And by the way, I'm constantly fighting this myself, that Europe is full of people who are risk averse. And who here is risk averse? Right, screw that, right? Yeah, it's over. It's basically over. And I think this whole kind of ridiculous caricature of Europeans being risk averse, I think it's fucked up kind of perspective. I think it's totally changed. It's completely changed in the last few years. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? What?
Well, if you look around in this room, you probably are right.
This is probably not this is like a self-selecting audience, admittedly.
Right. If you talk about failure culture, at least in Germany, we definitely don't have a failure culture. So if
you don't accept failure, you mean?
No. If you, as an entrepreneur,
why do you think that is?
If you dump your first company, that would be considered in the US as a test round, and something good will come after that. And here it's a failure, and it's basically something that will be on your name like a tag. So that's still the perception overall.
How is that going to change?
I would disagree. I think we're discussing this for years now, and I think 10 years ago there were already people running around saying that in the US you need to fail a couple of times until you'll successfully start your first company, and in Germany there is not such a failure culture. But I think since we're discussing this for 10 years now, the generation that is currently starting businesses doesn't really care too much about risk. So I would say that this changed already, and if you talk to the 20-somethings right now, they're absolutely fine with not earning a lot of money, with being innovative, trying something new, and if it doesn't work out, they try something new. So I would say we have already, at least in Berlin, in our ecosystem, we already see those changes taking place, and the people in the age, I would say, from 20 to 35, they are more about what to do and how much they love it and how much they believe in it than about making sure that it's going to be a success. So I would say that failure is not that important, at least in our industry. You can change from one company to the other.
That's it. I think we say the same thing in two different perspectives. One perspective is there is an industry, there is a group where exactly this trend is coming, so that's maybe bleeding edge or leading edge, but the overall perception in society and with investors and with banks and with all that is failure. And if you come to administrative culture, bureaucracy, etc.
But there is a structural war going on. I think a lot of, with the euro being fucked, the economies of Europe in such dire situation now, we have to surely create a culture of failure acceptance. Good grief, we've already got it. We've got terrible failure going on in the economy right now. It's, okay.
Let me give you an example.
But we've got to create legislative frameworks to allow people to fail in business and then pick themselves up again and then go again. A little bit like filing for Chapter 11 in the US. I mean, where are we on that?
If you want an example, for example, the World Bank is in-house making failure conferences to discuss what they did right and wrong. We proposed such a failure conference for German government for sub.
What was the reaction?
No, it doesn't fit in the culture. They said no way. We cannot even think about having a failure conference. So there's still something. We are almost 10, 15 years behind.
By the way, I mean, I'm not saying the British are any better. By the way, I'm not saying that the British are any better at this either. Okay, I'm just, and please, I hate all this regionality, but in a way we have to kind of talk about it. But what's your view?
I would disagree. As I said before, I think we already have this failure culture, and you may be right that when failing with your first company at the age of 22, it might not feel too good to explain this to your parents or to your grandparents, but do we really care? I mean, I stopped explaining, at least explaining to my parents what I'm doing a couple of years ago because it doesn't make sense, and they are fine with that I'm doing something, and they see that it seems to work quite okay. But I think there will be a gap that we won't bridge between the different generations. However, in the generation that is driving this economy, I think failure is absolutely accepted, as long as you take some learnings with it, right? But that's always the case. You as an individual, your organization, need to go ahead and look back, see what you've done wrong, and start something new.
I think Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn and PayPal, part of the PayPal mafia, and well-known entrepreneur and investor, expressed it very well recently by saying that he was not so interested in a failure culture or an acceptance of failure in startups, but in a learning culture. And learning is really, and I think that's the interesting thing about North American kind of worldview, is that they have a very sort of, because it's such a new country, really, it's only a couple of 100 years old, that they have this sort of forward-looking approach. Now, I agree that I think the culture is changing across Europe. I've been in Belgrade, I've been in all sorts of crazy places, Slovenia, wherever, Moscow, wherever. And I think the new generation coming through, it's over for me, by the way, but all these young people coming through are totally accepting of this new culture. But structurally and legislatively, we have to make sure that it's baked into society. If you file for bankruptcy, that you're not tarnished for the rest of your life, you can go on and do something new, etc.?
7 years.
Right. So I mean, what are you going to? I mean, we've got to kind of change this legislation, this policy.
Cut it down to 3 years.
Even less, I think, even potentially. What do you think?
I think it shouldn't be us asking ourselves how we can change politics, because that will take ages. Maybe we can give some ideas, but I think it's rather us accepting how the world looks like and trying to optimize this environment for ourselves.
Do you think that that's why the incubator culture of things like Rocket Internet, etc., have flourished in Germany, because they sort of throw bodies at the wall and see what sticks, as it were, but within the environment of an incubator?
I think there's two reasons why incubators or company builders are that successful in Germany. I think one is, as you said before, that there is probably more risk-averse talent than in other countries still, and that founding with an incubator will probably significantly increase the likelihood of success, however also decrease your ownership position and thereby make you a bit more like an employee than like a founder. But this, I think, that addresses some of the needs the people have that work with Rocket. And the other thing is that I think that this German engineering, especially if you are into copycatting, helps you a lot focusing on execution. I mean, this is something that has been discussed 1,000 times, but still, I think these are two reasons for company building like vehicles being more successful in Germany than in other regions.
Hermione's here. You're cutting us off.
Sorry, yeah, I had an alarm going and it didn't work. But anyway, I'm cutting you off. We ran out of time. So sorry for that about that. But who do you guys think was the winner of this hot seat? The startups.
They agreed with each other too much.
The startups that are going to change the world, or the startups?
Did we really answer the question how to become Germany's next top startup?
Very quickly.
I didn't really get the point.
Go ahead.
No. Did we discuss this at all?
Well, I think that yeah. Why not?
Okay. So I'm probably the loser.
Do we have time for questions?
No, we're out of time.
We're out of time.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll do the questions next session.
Okay, so who do you guys think was the winner? The startups that are going to change the world, or the startups that are going to make $1 billion? Change the world? $1 billion? I think you're the winner of the hot seat. Congratulations, big round of applause. And Mike, you're going to introduce the next speaker, so thank you very much.